You've had Wendy's Nuggs dipped in sauce, but have you had them covered in sauce? Dare I say, smothered in sauce? Wendy's new Saucy Nuggs take the crispy and spicy nugs you love and turn them up to 11. Choose between flavors like buffalo, honey barbecue, garlic parm, or if you're a real heat seeker, try the spicy ghost pepper only on Wendy's signature spicy nugs. By the way, you can spice up that buffalo. You can spice up that honey barbecue too. There's 7 delicious ways to try the nugs you already love. Pick a flavor, grab some extra napkins, and prepare to nug like you've never nugged before. For a whole new way to nug, it's got to be Wendy's at participating U.S. Wendy's. Welcome to Andy and Ari On3. Happy Monday. It is Labor Day. We work on Labor Day, Ari, because we're coming off week 1. We're coming off LSU, USC. We got to pick games for week 2. It just never stops.
Yeah, it feels like full season form right now, Andy, and it's like we have to work on Labor Day, but what a blessing that is to be able to do it today. I'm super excited and pumped up to be here. I got a rare good night's sleep last night. Baby was at mother-in-law's house, and I'm ready to ride. And I got to tell you, this Monday picks situation has really going to work for me, because it's like that hangover from Sunday to Monday with the season being over, or the weekend being over, the games being over, being able to hop in and just kind of start living what we're going to get to live through next weekend is going to be a nice little joy for me.
Oh, it's going to be spectacular. Now, you got a good night's sleep. Somebody who did not get a good night's sleep was Brian Kelly. And before we get to the picks, we have to talk about this Brian Kelly press conference. We did not get to talk about it on our reaction show last night. We were busy reacting to the game as Brian Kelly was answering questions from the reporters in Las Vegas. And he gives us one of these in every post-game press conference after these weird standalone games that he, for whatever reason, can't seem to win at LSU. I don't understand why these particular games are so vexing for him, because he wins most of the other ones. But these just, it doesn't work, and you get stuff like this.
Disappointing when those guys perform and you don't get a victory.
Hell yes. I mean, and that's what I said to the team. I said, we had some guys played their butts off tonight, and we're sitting here again. We're sitting here again talking about the same things, about not finishing when you have an opponent in a position to put them away. But what we're doing on the sideline is feeling like the game's over. And I'm so angry about it that I got to do something about it. I'm not doing a good enough job as a coach. And I got to coach him better, because it's unacceptable for us not to have found a way to win this football game. It's ridiculous. And it's crazy.
I think he's still in favor of executing his team. By the way, that came after one of those games, too. That was a game he won at Notre Dame against Florida State on Labor Day. Like, maybe he needs to come down with the flu before he talks to the reporters after games like this.
Andy, this is how I feel when I watch Brian Kelly have an episode. It looks like to me that he has to tell himself, how am I supposed to be feeling right now? And then he acts like that. Like, that was anger, right? And it just always seems manufactured to me. And I don't know what it is. I think he obviously is a very good coach who has won a lot of games and has done things at multiple programs. But like, I think the reason why he gets mocked so much is because whenever he illustrates a emotion of any kind, it just doesn't seem real to me. Like, did that look like he was actually seething angry, or did it look like he had to perform that he was angry to you?
Most people who are angry do not have to say, I'm so angry. The anger just shines through in your words and your actions and your demeanor.
Yeah.
You don't have to say it. And yes, the fist pound did seem performative. I must say, though, the professionalism of whoever was holding that Channel 2 microphone, that thing did not move. Didn't move a centimeter. Also, the water bottle. What were the odds that water bottle was going to land upright? That was impressive.
It seemed like something that we'd be analyzing on the History Channel 50 years from now if that was like a more controversial situation. I don't know. I think that Brian Kelly understands the job that he took. Obviously, I think he knows the importance of winning these games. I think that he came into the game expecting that his team does that. And then when it comes up short in year 3, and you put yourself in a position where you're heading into a very difficult SEC schedule, to not finish a game that they had basically won if they had one more drive finished, I can understand why he would be very frustrated. Like, LSU did make strides. We spent 15, 20 minutes last night talking about how much USC's defense improved, and we really didn't spend that much time talking about how much LSU's defense improved. And they had a really bad defense last year, and they got some stops, and they were playing against an offense that by and large has a really good quarterback and a bunch of insanely good skill position talent players, and they had a chance to win. They were one drive away in the fourth quarter from going down the field, scoring a touchdown, and putting the game away, and they didn't. So, yeah, and we know the standard at LSU. We know what the LSU fans are expecting from their coach, from their team. They fell short, but it just, the anger is reasonable. It just doesn't seem like real anger to me. I don't know what it is about him, but that's just how I feel every time he elicits any sort of emotion.
Well, and he talked about how the personal fouls killed them, how he's got to do a better job coaching. He also said that Miller Moss outplayed Garrett Nussmeier, which may be true, but I don't know that I hang this one on Garrett Nussmeier, who played about as well as any LSU player played last night.
Yeah, and I actually came away thinking like that could be one of the 2 best quarterbacks that LSU has had since 2000. You know, obviously no one's surpassing Joe
I would
Burrow.
say one of the 3, since 2 of them won Heisman trophies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Jaden Daniels did win a Heisman Trophy. You know, we don't need to go down the Jaden Daniels road, but that to me was a very encouraging performance, both from there. I think that, like, it is funny, Andy, because I had this thought after we hung up the stream last night. But if LSU would have won the football game, I think we would have had very similar conversation about LSU that we had about USC. Like, and that's what happens in these close games when it comes down to the final minute. Whoever wins, gets the focus. But like, imagine if LSU would have won, we would be talking about their new quarterback who looks primed for stardom. We'd be talking about their highly improved defense that got a stop at the end of the game that they absolutely needed. And instead, we talked about USC and all of their improvements. But I think that LSU certainly made strides, especially on defense during the offseason. It just gets overshadowed when you don't finish a game against a team that, you know, frankly, they could have beaten.
Yeah, and we had somebody in the chat last night say, hey, you know, you could have just watched the Texas is back game. You don't know if you did or not. And he's right about that. And that's another Brian Kelly loss there. That was Texas beating Notre Dame in 2016. And we thought, hey, these are 2 good teams. Texas finally got over the hump. And Notre Dame was 4-8 and Texas was 5-7. So we don't know what we saw last night. And we won't know until we've seen these 2 teams against some other people. But I do get the sense that USC's defense looked better. But you're right. We would have said the same thing about LSU's defense because it did look better. It did look better. Now, it looked like they were blitzing a lot to make up for, you know, some issues they have in coverage. And Miller Moss handled that. My question is, are all the quarterbacks they play going to be able to handle that? Like, I think Jackson Dart probably will be able to. I think Jalen Milroe, we don't know yet. I think they're gonna be able to heat some people up, and it may work.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I think is interesting about that we just watched 2 8-4 teams play is, you know, I do think that through the years of covering the sport, you do get a sense of teams that have pieces that are going to translate into other games. Like, we don't know if USC is going to go out and lose 4 or 5 games this year, but I can tell you right now that I'd be surprised if they did. And, you know, it's not always so much about the opponent and how good your opponent's going to be. It's what you illustrate you have on your roster and whether or not you think that can be effective. Like USC's players that were getting open last night, Zach Branch is not good because they were playing LSU. Miller Moss didn't
he's
look
good
very
all the time
because they're playing LSU. They have pieces in place that will perform and translate very well into the Big Ten, especially if half their schedule is former Big Ten West teams that are just no longer in a side of the conference. So, like, I do think that it was very easy to assume that USC could be a 7-5, 8-4-ish type team coming into the year, because if you can't stop anybody again, then, you know, you're in a situation where the Big Ten's just going to wear you down and beat you. But I am so much more confident that USC can get stops. I'm even more confident that LSU can get stops. Why? Because I'm very confident in the quarterback play that we saw. Like, I mean, how many games did we watch on Saturday where it was a Power 5, Power 4 type national championship contender go an entire half against an FCS or a MAC team and not look that good? Like, you can't be like, oh, well, both of these games are 8 or teams are 8-4 and we didn't really learn anything. It's like, okay, well, then did we not learn anything from Oregon going into the fourth quarter with Idaho? Like, I mean, I do think that it is opponent based to a certain extent, but it's also the look about it. Like, I do think that both of these teams had a look about them that made me feel like, to borrow your word, will travel to further games in the future. Because I don't think Garrett Nussmeier stinks. I don't think Miller Moss stinks. I think the skill position, like Harold Perkins is one of the best defenders in college football. Hopefully he'll be able to be unleashed a little bit more this year. Like, I do think both of these teams are going to be competitive against anybody they play this year.
Well, and competent quarterback play has a look to it. And you certainly saw that from Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier. Like, you can tell, even like, there are teams that are good that have less than competent quarterback play, but the talent around them makes up for it. This was not that case. This was a case where these guys both clearly are very comfortable in that offense and great at running it. Deltona Doug with an interesting comment here. Sad LSU fan here. Kelly is a high floor, low ceiling guy, 8-4, 9-3. The bigger problem is his refusal to accept responsibility. Tired of him blaming players. Play calling fell apart in the second half. I don't know that the play calling fell apart. I think they realized John Emery is their best back. I'm assuming he was not allowed to play in the first half, and that's why he didn't play in the first half. I think that changed some stuff. I do wonder if John Emery had played the whole game, is it called differently?
Yeah. You know what struck me in that game? And I think we probably should have talked about this last night, but the good news is we get to talk about it every day. I get to see your beautiful face.
Talk about it tomorrow too.
There was a sequence after LSU went up by 4. They got a stop. Remember that bad possession that USC had offensively where they had the penalty? They were backed up, and I think it was 3rd and 23 from inside their own 20. Then they punt the ball back. LSU gets the ball back, and they're facing a 3rd and 1. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that Emery was the ball carrier on this play, and USC stuffed them on 3rd and 1. Like, that, to me, I think was the most critical sequence of the entire game, because USC is not supposed to stop a SEC team on 3rd and 1. 2, LSU is supposed to be able to gain a yard against anybody on 3rd and 1. And then it kind of flipped the game and allowed USC to get back into it. So, like, the thing that I think is most interesting about Brian Kelly's post game isn't that he slammed his fist in a performative way to illustrate anger. I think it's some of the comments that he made that would rub me the wrong way if I played for him. Like, I do not think that, like, Garrett Nussmeier is the reason they lost that game yesterday.
Yeah. And he's going to have to deal with that in his own locker room. And maybe that's the reason why his teams never seem to get over the hump. And we're going to find out. We were going to find out exactly what we saw as these teams transition to play in other teams. We need to transition to making some picks because there are some big games this weekend. But first, I'm going to tell you how to get to those big games. You want to go to Texas, Michigan, and Ann Arbor? Ari and I will be there. You want to see us there? Download the Gametime app. Use that code STAPLES. There are tickets. The code STAPLES will give you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. But they have tickets to everything. They also have this new GT Picks feature. And if you're looking on the screen, you see me using it on my Gametime app, which shows you the best deals relative to the rest of the market for that game. So you can get into the Michigan-Texas game. You can get into Colorado, Nebraska, in Lincoln. You hit that GT Picks feature. It's going to tell you what the best seat is for the money right now. They got tickets to everything at Game Time. Download the app. Use the code Staples. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, of course. But every game you want to go to, last minute, doesn't matter. Of course, these games have been sold out for months, but you can get tickets on Game Time. So download it now and use that code Staples. All right, let's make some picks.
Andy, if they want to see me next weekend too, I think they need to get the Game Time app and download the app for sure. See us at the game. But if you want to really see me, hit me in the casinos on Friday night because I'm going to be buzzing.
That's right. The Greek town.
I'm going to be playing poker till 4 in the morning, and then I'm going to pick you up from the airport. That's my plan. I'm not going to bed. Yeah,
I got a high school football game on Friday night, so I'm swooping in day of. But we need private jet travel. We're going to put that in our next contract.
How do you get, like Carson Beck? How do we get On3 NIL private jet like sponsorships? Like
we make this the biggest show in the universe. That's how we do it.
Let's do it.
And we're going to do it by making these picks. And remember, Ari, you were not here for this, but of course you know about it. I did have that perfect week last year where they put the graphic out with 8 picks and I went 0 for 8. I'm still
which is just as impressive as going as 8-0 in my opinion, like mathematically speaking. And it is funny because like whenever I have a weekend like that, there was one time during the NCAA tournament, Andy, in like 2015 or 16, where I went like 0-20. And I was like, I have never gone 20-0 ever. And it's still mathematically the same odds. Like it's like I hit a 20 team parlay by betting incorrectly 20 times in a row. Like, do you know how impossible? Like, you could be the most ignorant person in the world. I could get my daughter to circle random teams on a sheet and she wouldn't go 20 or 0-20. So, you know what? I think that's a badge of honor and you should like carry that. Like, you hit an 8-team situation there. Like, that's really, really good.
And I do. And I appreciate the folks who picked those because we actually made, I think we made 13 picks that week in that show. And I actually went 4-1 on the other 5. So the 0-8 is great because here's the thing. You got to develop a brand. And if I can go 8-0, that's great. But most people don't go 8-0. But if I go 0-8, then you just fade me.
Yeah.
Like it's still attractive. You still want to see, what did Andy pick this week? So I can go against him.
Have you ever gotten so on tilt where you had the thought that you should start fading yourself? Like if you think something, then just pick the other side just on purpose because you just know you're going to be wrong. I've had some pretty dark times in my apartment, I'll tell you. back in the single RE20s.
Yeah. Every day of my life.
It's like the George Costanza opposite thing. Like it's just like everything that you think or everything that you think you would want to do, just do the absolute opposite thing and it's going to work out for you. But I do think we could start a fade Andy trend here if you don't, but like, you're pretty good at this.
Producer River from the On3 Sports YouTube handle in the chat where they have it in the group chat. They have a trend, fade Andy.
Oh boy.
Like that. Come on. No faith, but that's fine. If that's my brand, I'll take it because if you want to feel like I'm more accurate being wrong, I'm okay with that. And yes, there have definitely been times in my life where my thought waking up in the morning, and I'm not talking about picking games, I'm talking about making life choices, are just go against your instincts.
Andy, this will work out. This show is a resource. If you listen to the show for picks, you use it to gain information that you think is going to give you an edge. And if we're wrong all the time, that is an incredible resource for the listener still to make informed decisions about what they want to do with their hard-earned money. So I think that regardless of how correct you are providing a important and valuable service, which is to inform people what the wrong thing is, which then, if they're smart, will turn into winners. So either way, we got you covered here.
Let's give some people some red meat. We're going to start out with the game that we're going to. I don't know if it's the biggest game of the week because I think
the Brian Kelly.
That's my.
What would somebody who's excited do?
No, I am excited. I'm angry. I'm angry. See, my camera's on a tripod, so when I hit the table, nothing shakes. It's terrible.
It's amazing.
Stuff is jumping off this desk. I promise. All right, Texas, Michigan. We're going to this game, Ari. We watched Texas look flawless on offense. It was Colorado State. We don't yet know if Texas's defense is having any trouble replacing Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, because we haven't seen them against a better opponent. We're going to see that. Michigan chose Davis Warren as the starting quarterback, which means they chose that type of offense. Instead of the Alex Orji starting, kind of doing what Alabama did with Jalen Milroe last season, they're going Davis Warren, more traditional pocket passer. They'll bring in Orji at times, but they're hoping that line's going to open holes for the backs, that Davis Warren's going to hit the receivers in the flow of the offense. I don't know if that's going to be the best way to beat Texas here.
Yeah. So here's the question that I have back for you. And we were at another game on Saturday, but I did my best to keep tabs on this Michigan game. I was watching it on my iPad for a little bit. And the question that I have is, at what point does it go from what are the Michigan quarterbacks going to look like this year, or what are they going to get out of the quarterback position this year, to, oh no, they might have a quarterback problem? Like, 1 week, definitely don't want to overreact, but I am on high alert that Michigan is not going to get high-level quarterback play this year, regardless of who's on the field. And I think the reason for that is just taking J.J. McCarthy a little bit for granted. I mean, last year I used to go on rants about J.J. McCarthy and how Michigan never asked him to do anything, and he never made plays with the game on the line for the majority of his career. And then it turned out to be that he was the vessel that elevated the play of his teammates. And I think there was something about having a person that confident, that talented, and that ability that really helped Michigan run the ball as well as they did. So, like, I don't know if I'm on board with, well, they didn't ask J.J. McCarthy to do a lot last year, and they still won a ton of games. They ran the ball really well. Obviously, they still have Donovan Edwards. Their offensive line is usually good no matter who it is. They do have a lot of important pieces on the defensive line, obviously, and one of the best corners in the country. But if Michigan doesn't get medium level to high level quarterback play, then I think we need to reconfigure what our expectations are for this team. And I think we're going to find out on Saturday against a very talented Texas team whether or not Michigan's going to be able to produce or squeeze value out of the quarterback position. Not just somebody who's going to operate, hand the ball off, and not turn it over, but are they going to make plays that help Michigan win games? Because even though J.J. McCarthy didn't run up the stats last year, Andy, he did make plays that helped Michigan win the game. He was very efficient in times. He always had one jaw-dropping play a game. The man was drafted in the top 15. So, like, that is a huge drop-off. So we'll see what it goes. But I do really, really feel like I'm concerned about the quarterback position for Michigan going into the year.
The truth. Does Ari know what a pro-style offense is? It's all about the power run game with some throws, not about throwing the ball over the yard.
Oh.
The truth doesn't watch a lot of the NFL anymore. The pros do it differently now. You're talking about the 90s and the early 2000s, what they ran in the NFL. And yes, it's great when you can run the ball. We don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they were last year, and that's going to be the issue.
Will you teach
me? Go
ahead.
ahead.
Because I want you to teach me about football right now.
Okay, Ari. Well, there's this thing called 21 personnel.
Okay.
And so 21 personnel is two backs and one tight end. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of the NFL teams did in the late 90s and early 2000s. You might see the I formation. You might see the backs get
Does the
split.
I formation look like an I? Is that why
it does? Like and there was a thing called a fullback, which hardly anybody uses anymore. In fact, Michigan barely uses it anymore. No, it is funny that everybody's just thinks that's what pro style, like, go watch the Dolphins play. That's a pro team. They don't do that anymore.
And I just drafted the Tua Tyreek stack for my fantasy team, so I'm happy you brought them up. They chuck it. And let me tell you, in football nowadays, if you do not have a quarterback who can go out and make you a play, being one-dimensional as a running team is not going to get you where you need to go. Now, Michigan ran the ball very effectively last year, and they had the best running back duo in the country. I watched them play every game they played last year. I do think that J.J. McCarthy was dangerous, and it allowed opponents to not completely sell out for the run every play because they knew if they did, McCarthy would get out of the pocket. He would make a play. He would throw it downfield. They had, I think, better receivers a year ago than they do now. I know they have Colston Loveland, who's a great target, but I don't think it's like controversial to say that if they have subpar quarterback play, that's a problem for them. Like, is that like a weird thing to think?
No, it is not.
Okay.
Here's what I think has to happen for Michigan to be in this game. Their defense has to be so good that it makes Texas's offense look average.
Mm-hmm. Which is possible, by the way. It is possible. Yeah,
it is, because this is a great defense. You know, we talked about Texas last year with those 2 defensive tackles and how good they were and what a difference they made. Michigan has 2 better ones in Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. Like, they may not both go higher than Byron Murphy did last year, but they're both going to go very high in the draft. It's going to be very similar to Murphy and T'Vondre Sweat. And Michigan is better at linebacker. Michigan is better in the secondary than that. But I do feel like Texas in the receiver room, especially with who they brought in, they might be too loaded to hold back. That's the part I'm trying to figure out, is as good as Michigan is in the secondary, are the Texas receivers good enough to just be able to make plays on even this group?
It's kind of crazy to think that Texas lost like A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy and Whittington, and are just like, oh, and J.T. Sanders, and it's just like they're got a lot of really, really good receivers. Like, I think that, like, to me is just the hallmark of what recruiting well does for you and doing very good in the portal. I mean, like, just having like Isaiah Bond just fall out of the sky and be on your team that next year is an important thing. So that said, I think it's possible if you did like a draft of the 2 best players in this game, that they would both be on Michigan.
Yes, agreed. But maybe the best 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mason Graham and Will Johnson would be pick 1 and 2, whatever order.
Kenneth Grant is my favorite player in college football.
Kenneth Grant is probably not far behind those guys. So, like, the thing that is also wrong, because I did start this by not being too high up on Michigan, is that I think the perception too is that Jim Harbaugh left, their entire team is gone, and they're just a fraud now. And it's like, if you really open your eyes and look, they have a lot of dudes in important places, and they still have the potential to be a very good football team, a team that contends for the Big Ten title. But I do think, going back to the initial point, that they are going to have to squeeze out value from their quarterback position if they're going to reach levels that are dangerous to Oregon and Ohio State and Penn State in this league this year.
Can Michigan's defense make Quinn Ewers make mistakes? Because I think that's another thing that could change this. Because if you give your offense short fields, even if your offense is struggling, you're going to come away with points a lot of the time. So can they make Quinn Ewers throw picks? Can they make Quinn Ewers do things that he wouldn't normally do? Because I do think that's probably the way Michigan would win this game.
Yeah. I do think that's possible. I do think that you're looking at a over-under here of 45.5, which I think kind of implies that that's what the expectation is, that this is a low-scoring 24-20 type game. And if it gets into that type of situation, then Michigan absolutely has a chance to win. That said, I do think that Texas has a lot of firepower, and in college football, a good defensive performance against a very explosive offense is holding them to 30. Like, you know, we're not in the days anymore of like, we're going to hold you to 17 because our defense is awesome. Like, teams are going to score. Offenses have inherent advantages based on the rules of the game. And, you know, Will Johnson is there, but he's not the only person that's going to, you know, cover people. So I do think that Texas is going to win this game by a touchdown.
Well, all right. So we got your pick. Texas covers 6.5. I'm going to say almost a touchdown is too tantalizing to not take. So I am going to take Michigan to cover. I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I think the atmosphere, the fact that this is their first big home game after the national title game, this is what everybody's been waiting for. They're going to come out fired up. That defense is going to make some plays. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I think it's going to be enough to keep them close enough to cover. So I will take Michigan plus 6.5.
You know, the
got
spread
Texas.
was 3.5 all summer.
I do. And then they
So-
played the games. And,
Yeah.
and Michigan did not inspire confidence. But look, Fresno State is not terrible. And this was the first time Davis Warren started a game. We always talk about the improvement from 1 to 2, whether it's season 1 to season 2, game 1 to game 2. Well, now we know who the starting quarterback is. Now we know what they're going to do. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I still don't know if they're going to win the game. But if you're going to give me almost a touchdown, I will take it. Now, my other question is, will we see Quinn Ewers the entire game? Because Quinn Ewers getting pulled very early for Arch Manning against Colorado State kind of killed me on Saturday. Let's talk about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best daily fantasy game in America. Use that code Staples. Play $5, get $50 instantly. And so let's take us back to Saturday. I was using a demon square with Quinn Ewers and Sam Levitt. So Quinn Ewers was playing against Colorado State. I knew he was going to have a good game. My question was, will it be too good? And he gets pulled really early. And then Sam Levitt's the Arizona State quarterback. And obviously he had a good game, but at that point it didn't matter because Quinn Ewers got pulled just before he could go more than 299.5 yards. The demon squares on PrizePicks, those are a little more difficult to get, but the potential payout is higher. That's how PrizePicks work. You pick squares and you say, I think this person's going to do more than this or less than this. You pick at least 2. You can go as high as 5. And the more you pick, the higher the potential payout. I did win one, though. I went Dylan Raiola more than 235.5 passing yards. Lenora Sellers, the South Carolina quarterback, more than 40.5 rushing yards. And Nick Singleton, the Penn State running back, more than 0.5 rushing or receiving touchdowns. So that one, $50 play, wins you $250. That's how PrizePicks work. It is so much fun. It really livens up a Saturday or a Sunday, NFL obviously. I mean, or any day because they've got everything. They have gaming, like League of Legends, like they've got all of it. So yeah, download PrizePicks now. Play $5, get $50 instantly with the code Staples. They've got the free squares. It's a Caleb Williams free square right now for the first NFL games this week, where it's basically more than 0.5 passing yards. So if you pick that one, you're going to get that square as long as Caleb Williams completes one pass, and I think he's probably going to complete a few. So download that PrizePicks app. Use code Staples. Ari, let us go to the great state of Iowa, because as you know, on this show, we always pick the Iowa total, but this time we're also picking the Iowa spread. The Cy-Hawk game, Iowa State at Iowa. Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite. The total on this sucker is 36.5. Iowa scored 40 against Illinois State. Are you pumped? Are you jazzed? Are you ready for an Iowa explosive offense where they hit receivers for touchdowns? They had 3 receiving touchdowns. 2 receivers scored touchdowns. They tied last year's total for touchdowns by wide receivers.
That stat does not ever stop being like
hilarious.
I cannot even believe that's a real stat. So let me ask you this. Where are you with Iowa? Like you feel good about like things being fixed, or do you think that they are marginally better and we're playing against a team that physically couldn't just handle what the athletes have? Like, do you think that they are going to be functional on offense this year?
Probably not. I think they're probably the same team they were last year.
Yeah.
They were playing Illinois State. They're playing an FCS team. Like, no, I am not confident in this offense because it took a whole half to get going. This game was 6-0 at halftime. Yeah. But yes, Reese Vanderzee, who we're going to call the ice cream man because his family runs an ice cream business in extreme northern Iowa. He had 2 touchdown catches. Maybe he's the savior of the offense. I have no idea. But I do not feel supremely confident that Iowa's going to be any different than they were last year. That said, being the same as they were last year still might win them 9 or 10 games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'm ready for them to be fixed because I enjoy like kind of watching the misery. It's very compelling to me. But I do think that Iowa State might actually be a lot better than people are giving them credit for this year too. So like, I feel like the spread of this game has been Iowa -2.5 for like the last 30 years. It just like seems to be the same spread every single year. But like laying points, I'm not in a position where I'm comfortable with Iowa laying points against a Power 5 opponent that actually has very good skill position players.
Well, at Iowa State, I feel like it's felt different since they went and beat Kansas State at the end of last season. And Rocco Beck, he's been there. Because remember, this time last year, Rocco Beck was not the guy they had planned to start, and they had to deal with the fallout of the gambling investigation, and Deckers was out. So Rocco Beck now, full year under his belt as a starter. I'm excited about this game. I don't know that I'm as confident about Iowa State's offense against Iowa's defense as you are. So I am going to take Iowa to cover, and I'm going to take the under.
I'm going to take the under, but I think Iowa State's going to win the football game.
Okay.
I like Iowa State's pieces. I mean, like their running back, Abu Sama is one of the best running backs in the country. I saw some people reaching for him in dynasty fantasy football leagues. I think he's really, really talented. And then Jalen Noel at the receiver position is a guy who can get you over 100 yards receiving every week. And Rocco Becht has been pretty impressive to me. I think that like if this game is 13-10 at the end of the road, that might just mean like that Iowa had a special teams touchdown or something. I mean, I just like, it's like the Jesse Pinkman meme. You can't keep getting away with this. Like, I don't know. Like last year, Iowa won 9. How many games did they win last year? They got to almost 10, I think. I think they won 9 games last year.
Yeah.
They had a really good year.
They keep getting away with this, Ari. They keep getting away with this.
So, yeah, the thing with Iowa is they score an inordinate amount of special teams and defensive touchdowns. And a lot of those types of touchdowns were the difference in the games that they won. Is that you always like to say something travels, like the offensive line travels. Do defensive touchdowns travel? Do special teams touchdowns travel? Like, I don't know how much you can rely on that year after year. Like, it's like, but they scored like, I think there was like 2 or 3 times more special teams and defensive touchdowns and receivers caught touchdown passes. Like, that's not a sustainable thing that's going to lead you to success. And like,
it is when you keep doing it. It is
but like, do you think they can keep doing it? It's what I'm asking you, because I do think that there's an element of randomness to special teams and defensive touchdowns
against not Ohio State and not Penn State. Yes, I do think they can keep doing it because it's not the points you're getting directly from special team scores or defensive scores. It's the fact that you have elite special teams and defense, which are going to win you most games.
Yeah. But I do think that Iowa in many situations last year needed the points they got from those things. And I think you can have an elite defense and elite special teams without generating as many points as they did last year. I think that's one of the biggest statistical anomalies. I mean, Iowa last year is if you like show people their statistics and record and some of the play-by-play from last year and 100 years from now, like they'll like do archaeology studies on like how that was even possible. Like I still don't even know how you can field a football team that won as many games they did last year while being that incompetent on offense. And I just don't know that. I think year over year, it's something that I anticipate is reliable. Like, I think it's random, and good defense isn't random, but scoring on it is.
I don't think it's random, because if it were random, they would have gone 4-8 at some point, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's a product of the Big Ten West, and with it gone, but they still got the easier schedule draw in the Big Ten. So I don't even know if that.
Let me ask you it this way then, Andy. If I told you that Iowa would not score a special teams or defensive touchdown in this game, would you still pick them to win? Like, if I said that cannot happen, it won't happen.
Yeah, because they would still have a situation where they pinned Iowa State on the 2 with a punt, Iowa State gets stuffed, goes 3 and out, punts from their own 5, and Iowa gets the ball on offense on the Iowa State 45, and they score a field goal that, they gain 20 yards and score a field goal. Like,
I think that will happen.
But that always happens. That's how this works.
Yeah.
So
but I think that like getting the ball at the 45 and like hoping that it results in a field goal is the problem.
All right. So Iowa State spread or money line? You want the 2.5 points? You want to just say they win?
Iowa State's going to win the football game.
All right. We go from Iowa State's going to win the football game to is Auburn going to win the football game? Cal at Auburn. Auburn 12.5 point favorite with the Golden Bears coming in. The ACC opponent, Golden Bears. Now, these two teams played last year in Berkeley. This is, we think, a different Auburn team. We think Hugh Freeze has got some stuff figured out. We saw Cam Coleman score his first touchdown as a college receiver, but also Jaden Ott for Cal, one of the best backs that Auburn is going to see all year. Is this a different Auburn, Ari? Can they come in? Like, they should be able to cover this. They should be able to do what they want to do, which is win. I think, obviously, they want to make the playoff. But realistically, I think a good goal for Auburn is like go 9-3 this season. Go 8-4 would be improvement, but I think they'd like to go 9-3. I think they feel like they could win 9 games this year.
Well,
if they're that type of team, they could cover this.
Well, if they want to win 8 or 9 games this year, they have to perform in this game. Because you go look at the back half of the middle portion and the back half of their schedule. Part of their schedule is Oklahoma, Georgia, and Missouri 3 in a row, and then at Kentucky is the 4th game in that stretch, and then they finish with A&M and at Bama. So like they have a marginally tough schedule. I think if they got to 8 or 9 wins on this schedule, they'd be in a position of great improvement. Now, the thing that I keep clinging to, and as a recruit Nick myself, who pays attention to who these studs are, like getting Cam Coleman is maybe the first recruiting get for Auburn that turns it around. Like I think Peyton Thorne probably is who he is at this point. Like I don't know that I'm going to come into the season and think, okay, this guy's going to be a completely improved, better version of himself. But I do think when you have a guy like Coleman on your team who can't be covered, who's an instant impact player, that opens up your offense in a way that really drives home success. Like think about how many teams last year were so successful because they had a receiver on their team that no one could cover. I do like Auburn's chances of covering this game. I think that Auburn is a more talented team than Cal, and they have improved under a coach that understands how to build a roster. So, 12.5 is kind of a scary number, but a team that is feeling good about itself, maybe found some things offensively, has some new people in the mix to help them be a new version of themselves coming off a 73-3 win. There were some Auburn fans, Andy, that were really upset that we didn't talk about them on Saturday. So give us a reason to talk about them this coming Saturday.
They played Alabama A&M.
I know, but
we won. We had very important results between big-time teams to talk about. We had a meltdown in Gainesville. We had, the Clemson hot takes wrote themselves. Like, what you want us to talk about a game against Alabama A&M? Come on.
They scored 70.
Great. Do you know how many yards a carry you would have averaged in that game?
The current me, maybe like 2.
Yeah, I think you could definitely do 2.
Yeah. If somebody gave you $1 million, but you had 5 attempts to rush for a yard in an NFL game right now, would you take that?
Only because I know I can absorb punishment. I know how it feels to be hit by an NFL first rounder. And if I only have to do it 5 times and I might make $1 million, here's the problem. I'm not getting that yard. Not getting it.
Yeah. But like,
there's no chance.
If you had to pay $5,000 out of your checking account, if you didn't get the yard, would you take the risk?
Absolutely not. If it's just a free $1 million and somebody might trip and I can... Nathan in the chat, how good's my O-line? That is a legit question. But I don't even think it matters.
I don't know.
I do like Jack Conklin. I do.
I guess the punishment would be the punishment physically that you would receive from attempting it. So you would attempt it if you didn't lose any money.
I probably would if I wasn't going to lose any money. If I had to pay my own money, I absolutely wouldn't, because I think we know how that story ends. Here's one where we don't know how the story ends. This is a fascinating game to me, Ari. South Carolina goes to Kentucky. Kentucky is a 9.5-point favorite at home. SEC opener for both teams. Kentucky looked very good against Southern Miss in the Brock Vandegrift debut game. South Carolina looked very iffy against Old Dominion in the Lenora Sellers debut game. Yet, I'm not sure anything we saw this past Saturday will inform what we're going to see this Saturday.
Yeah. Kentucky was kind of cooking with jet fuel on Saturday. They won 31-0, and I think basically the entire second half of their game was canceled. So that's really encouraging. But like the thing that I always have a hard time with, Andy, is how much can you extrapolate from South Carolina's game? Like, do you think South Carolina was sleepwalking? It was a tough opener. They were knocking the rust off. They're much better than they showed. Or do you think, and this is a problem we had when picking the Michigan game, like that the Fresno State game and South Carolina's tough opener tell you anything about what that team is going to be? Like I struggle with that a lot in week 2. Like Old Dominion almost beating them. Does that to you a symptom of a problem that's going to be exposed on Saturday? Or do you think we're going to get a really good SEC game against two teams fired up to take a step forward this year?
Also, there may be a little styles make fights in this thing, because would you agree that South Carolina probably didn't have a better team than Kentucky the last 2 years, and yet Shane Beamer beat Mark Stoops the last 2 years? It's sort of, and then Mark Stoops has that with Billy Napier at Florida, where his style just they're better than Florida at that style. But for whatever reason, and Stoops has said some things about Shane Beamer, and Shane Beamer has fired back after beating him the last 2 years. So I don't know where to go with this one, Ari. I think I do know where to go with this, because 9.5 is so many freaking points.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking South Carolina just because it's a pretty big spread, and
right. That's the only reason.
Yeah, I also too, like our boy Cody Belair, I really, really like Lenora Sellers. I think that he's a person that can create and problem solve and extend drives and do things that, help your team find some points. And I'm not necessarily sure I'm going to overreact to the Old Dominion game, especially because Old Dominion over the years has proven that they can hang with teams early in the season from the P5, P4, and really be a pain in their ass. So like, I think that Kentucky is probably going to win the game. I like Kentucky to win it. I don't know if they're going to win by double digits.
Yeah, that's the thing. The only reason I'm taking South Carolina is that spread is so high. I do think Kentucky's going to win this. I like their playmakers. I like the offense they've built around Brock Vandegrift. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys this year. And they also strike me as a team that can beat somebody down the road where you're not expecting it. It's just that I really struggle with when you've got conference opponents that have fairly similar talent levels and you have one favored by almost double digits. This almost an automatic pick for me.
Yeah, and Kentucky has some pretty big stuff coming up down the pike here. I mean, the 1-2 punch with Ohio is a spacer there, but to Georgia and at Ole Miss is kind of a tough situation. So you want them,
and they play Georgia right after this game.
Right.
So,
that's what I'm saying. So you want to, if you're a Kentucky fan, to at least get off to a good start, get the 2-0 and try to feel good going into the Georgia game. I think that they will win the game. I just don't know if I'm at the point right now where I'm like, Kentucky is just going to kick everyone's ass that isn't Georgia and Alabama on their schedule. You know what I mean? Like, I think that they still have some physical limitations that teams that South Carolina can match up with.
All right, let's go quick this next one, because this is a game I think we're going to see one of our favorite coaches do a little cooking. Kansas at Illinois. We saw Kansas beat Illinois the last time they played. Kansas is a 5.5-point favorite on the road. We love Lance Leipold here on this show. We love Brett Bielema too, but I look at the talent difference in Illinois. Like, Illinois a few years ago had multiple first rounders on their defense. Now they have 0 first rounders on their defense. And by the way, Kansas is probably a little bit better than Kansas was. So I think Kansas is gonna look good in this game. I think this is gonna be a lot of fun.
Can I tell you a quick story?
Yes.
Last year, I drove from Dallas to Tuscaloosa for the game because by the time I figured out I was going, the flights were like $1,500 because everybody in Texas was going for the Alabama game. And I had a cute little Friday. Like I did a little drive. I stopped off in Shreveport, did a little gambling along the way, had a cute little lunch. Just like, every now and then a man needs an alone day.
Cute little lunch at the Fuddruckers in the casino where it like the cigarette smoke smell just permeates the burger.
Is that still there? Because if that Fuddruckers is still open, I might drive there for lunch today. Okay.
I think they all closed.
I have seen Fuddruckers multiple times, signs for it, and had just eaten and been upset because I do have a nostalgic desire to go. But then anyway, any guy can, I think, relate to this. You have an alone day, you go get dinner somewhere. I got a burger in Birmingham, and it was a delicious burger. And that Friday night, Andy, was last year's Kansas-Illinois game. And I was alone in Birmingham. I was going to watch the game in my hotel room, go to bed early before covering the Texas-Alabama game, get a good night's sleep. I throw a few shekels on this game, and somebody convinces me to bet Illinois. And Illinois got absolutely waxed last year. Like it was to the point where like I was starting to feel bad for them. And I don't know if they got better. Like I think Kansas got better.
I think
so.
You're
When
right.
I saw this spread being less than a touchdown, and I know year to year, last year's results don't matter, but it was it ruined my alone day because I didn't even get to enjoy the game. Get the burger. Get to watch the game, enjoy the sweat of it. Like it was such a absolute ass kicking from a schematic standpoint, from an athlete standpoint. Kansas could have scored 100 points in that game. I feel like I remember it like it was yesterday. There was no possible way in good faith after living through that hell. Like Illinois ruined my alone day that I could pick Illinois in this game. So I knew that the story probably sounded weird, but we got where we needed to go, didn't we?
We did. Kansas covers. Be there, aloha. All right, let us go to Charlotte. Normally, these games end with somebody getting dunked with mayo. That's not what's going to happen here, though Dave Doran and Josh Heupel getting dunked with mayo would be very fun. Tennessee, NC State. NC State, a 7.5-point dog to the Vols, who looked very sharp in their season opener, but it was Chattanooga. NC State also played an FCS team and survived by the skin of their teeth. Like they were in a game in the fourth quarter against Western Carolina. Now, Western Carolina, Cole Gonzalez, the Southern Conference preseason player of the year, he can sling it, but he ain't Nico. And now Nico's coming.
Yeah, where are you on the Nico hype train? Like, are you there's the caboose and there's the captain's chair?
I'm probably the conductor.
Are you driving the train? Yeah.
I don't know. Am I driving can I simultaneously drive the Avery Johnson and Nico Iamaleava hype trains? I think I can. I think I'm just doing this right now.
You have a single train garage and you have to pick which train you're the captain of. Which well, I mean, also too, I think you're on the Dylan Raiola train too. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I love what you did in this podcast. It's the bookend of the games of the week. It's like you're a pro, bro. You're a pro. But which train are you picking? Are you picking the Nico train or are you picking the Avery Johnson train?
I'm picking the Nico train. Nico's the safer bet. Well, because Nico has more talent around him too. That's the part with Avery Johnson. I'm not entirely sure about the people around him. Nico has lots of talent around him. Good offensive line, Dylan Sampson. The receivers, they feel good about with Brew McCoy, Squirrel White. Mm-hmm. They went out and got Chris Brazzell. Holden Stays, the tight end from Notre Dame. Like they have quite a bit. And then also in defense, they have a deep defensive line. So I do really like Tennessee. This game worried me all off season, and I'm less worried about it after watching both teams play. Now, again, what happened with NC State and Western Carolina could have been a fluky thing. and NC State's much better than what we saw. But I just think you saw a pretty costly interception from Grayson McCall that changed that game. The pass rush he's going to see is much different this week. It's going to be much tougher to deal with. I think Tennessee looked very competent on offense, and last year they didn't. So I'm taking Tennessee to win this thing, Tennessee to cover the spread. I think they're maybe even better than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I don't know, like if we're reliving 2 years ago again, where it's like Tennessee is sneaky good, and then all of a sudden they become one of the most appointment television teams of the year. Nico is a stud. I think that his inability, I don't know. I said inability. His ability to extend plays, his arm, everything. There's so much to like about him. I actually have been accused a lot of being a Tennessee hater for some reason, even though I don't really think about it that much. And I threw them in the top 10 of my weekly top 10 that I'm going to be doing on 3 after every Saturday. They're number 10. So like I'm already a few spots higher than most people probably have them in the polls right now. And I will move them up again if they win this game handily.
Yeah, I think they can do it. We'll see with NC State. Tony Gibson will try to confuse Nico. And this is a good test because Tony Gibson, as the defensive coordinator at NC State, throughout his history, he used to be at West Virginia. He will rush 7 or 8, or he'll drop 8, and you don't know which is going to happen on a given play. And it can be very confusing for a young quarterback. So this is going to be quite a test for Nico, but I do think he can pass it. So I'll take Tennessee to cover on that one. Next up, a team we talked about quite a bit over the weekend, the Clemson Tigers. This game, this is interesting. So Appalachian State coming to Clemson. Clemson is a 16.5-point favorite against Joey Aguilar and the Mountaineers. Appalachian State might be a fringe contender for the Group of 5 playoff spot, the highest ranked Group of 5 champ that will make the, well, I shouldn't say that. One of the 5 highest ranked champs that will make the playoff. Appalachian State could be one of those teams. Could be. But I think they would probably have to win this game to wind up in that spot.
You know what I was thinking when I looked at the week 2 schedule? Talk about the worst possible opponent that Clemson would have to face coming off of a game like the one that they just came off of. Like it's a game that they probably should win. They're almost 3-score favorites in this game. But if you actually peel back the curtain a little bit, App State brought back a ton of talent from last year, and they have been a team that is pesky to Power 5 teams. And if you are coming into this week as a Clemson fan, I would be a little scared. I'm not saying that they might not end up winning 41-10 or something and covering the spread easily, but also too, if we turn this game on Saturday and it's the third quarter and it's 17-10 or 10-3 or something, are you going to be surprised by that? I'm not.
No, I'm not.
Laying 3 scores is a lot here to me.
It is a lot. Here's where I think you can get a little sideways, though, based on what happened last week. Appalachian State's defense is not Georgia's defense.
Of course not.
Clemson is going to have some offensive success. They're going to be able to move the ball a little bit. They're going to be able to use some of the clock. Their defense is not going to be out on the field the entire time, getting worn out by a bunch of 5-star athletes. They still may struggle to score somewhat, but I do think having offensive success will allow Clemson's defense, which is the strength of its team, to actually function the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. I just have been like a big Joey Aguilar fan. I just like think that it's possible that App State is a thorn. And I think that a lot of this is just kind of up to Clemson. Like, how are we feeling as a team after that? Are we as demoralized as the fan base, or are we going to be able to pick ourselves up off the mat, stay confident in who we are and what we do, and just approach this game? Because it also kind of feels like if you play tight or the first quarter goes in a way that kind of reminds you of a little bit of the things that happened last week, if that just mentally perpetually gets more and more troublesome, and then it turns into a game that is in question in the late third quarter, which I think a Clemson blowout's on the table here, and I think a close game going into the fourth quarter's on the table here. I just think it's just not a game that Clemson, it's just a tricky game that Clemson's going to have to play coming off of what it's tricky, right? Is that the right word? It's a tricky game.
It's just like rocking a rhyme that's right on time. It's tricky. Yes. That said, I will take Clemson to cover. I think they bounce back. I stand by everything I said this weekend. They're not a national title contender anymore. They're not going to be a national title contender again until they decide to build rosters the way everybody else does. But they can still win a bunch of games, and they still have an elite defense.
Would a 10-win team that scares nobody that's competing for national championships beat App State by 17? That's the question.
On the right day.
I wouldn't touch this game in real life with a 10-foot pole, though.
I know. That's why I put it in here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why I put it in here.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going to happen? You got to pick something.
I think App State's going to cover the spread.
All right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think Clemson will win. I don't think they're going to lose. That would be crazy if they lost. But I think like Clemson might win like 27-17 or something.
You ready for the same level of tricky?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go out west. Boise State at Oregon. Oregon's a 19.5-point favorite after we just watched them struggle with Idaho. Boise State now struggled somewhat with Georgia Southern as well, but Ashton Genty had a record-setting day.
I wonder if both teams were looking ahead to the second game, because I do think that this game this is one of those games that you talk about in July, right? Like, what is Oregon going to be? And are they going to run into trouble week 2 when they face Boise? Like, so I have a hard time with the week 1 overreactions in the negative. I think that Oregon is still unquestionably one of the top 5 teams in the country. I think they have too much firepower to be a team that struggles week in and week out to score. Like, I like Oregon here to bounce back in a big way. And I think they're going to score a ton on Saturday.
So here's what happened with this game in Statesboro, Georgia. Boise State allowed a lot of yards, a lot of points. J.C. French threw for 322 yards. They also ran for a bunch of yards. Like, it was a bad deal. 45 points given up. And Ashton Genty, fortunately for Oregon, ran for 267 yards. And I keep calling Boise State Oregon. I don't know why. I got that Chip Kelly first game stuck in my head. The Byron Hout, LeGarrette Blunt punch game. But no, Ashton Genty runs for 6 touchdowns, 267 yards for Boise State. That allowed them to pull away at the end. But I'm with you. I think Oregon is going to figure out the offense, and it will not be as easy for Boise State to move the ball. I think Oregon does bounce back in this one and looks like the team that we kind of said all offseason they were going to be. If they're not, Ari, we have to really reevaluate what we think about Oregon. Like, if Boise State comes in here, even if Oregon wins, but if Boise State comes in here and it's a 1-score game and with 5 minutes to go, I'm not sure Oregon's what we thought.
Would you be there that quickly? You would get there to that?
Yeah, I would. I'd say whatever.
We know what Dylan Gabriel is. We know what Evan Stewart is. We know what Tez Johnson is. We know who these guys are. Like, how could I just like in my brain,
because sometimes when you change things around, bring new people in, the chemistry's different. That's the only reason. Yeah. I'm agreeing with you though. I think Oregon's going to cover this spread. Yeah. I think they're going to be fine. But I'm saying if they're not, we need to reevaluate. So I will take Oregon to cover 19.5, even though that is a massively gigantic number.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All right, Ari. Let us go to Lincoln, Nebraska. We have indeed bookended this thing. This game is so interesting because it is one that, as people who say things on YouTube, this is like a catnip game. Colorado, Nebraska, Coach Prime, the Nebraska fan base, which voraciously consumes everything said and written about their team. So much interest in this game for two teams that didn't make a bowl game last year.
You remember how exciting this game was last year, too?
I know.
It's just an inherently
Colorado had beaten TCU and surprised us. Yeah.
And
this one's going to be...
You add in a few extra pieces here, and one's a 5-star quarterback by the name of Dylan Raiola. And it is just fascinating. Like the thing that is a little bit disappointing to me, Andy, I don't know if disappointing is the right word, but just kind of disheartening, is that when I watched Colorado play, and I wasn't here with you able to talk about that game last week, I thought I was just watching another game from last year. It looked very similar to the things that they were able to do a year ago and some of the ailments that haunted them. But Colorado really did look like the better team last year when they played Nebraska. I think that the thing that this game is going to come down to is how much Nebraska is better, not just because they have a quarterback that's young and exciting and might be the best player in college football next season, but how much are they able to shake off the grab ass that has been incessant within their program for the past 4 or 5 years? Because the thing that was most shocking to me about Nebraska's season a year ago was that even though you got a guy like Matt Rule to coach your team, you still saw elements of what hurt them during the Scott Frost era, which was terrible turnovers, bad play calls and weird times, penalties, fumbled snaps, like all these things that just are like, can you just clean it up? And I've been waiting and on high alert for the relentless competence of Matt Rule and his staff to bleed onto the product on the field, because I truly do believe that if Nebraska just cleans up the crap and plays a clean football game, they might not go win 11 games, but I think they would be a really difficult team to beat for anybody. And if you remember, I don't remember exactly what happened, but I do remember that this Colorado-Nebraska game was before the Alabama-Texas game, and I was watching that in the morning of the morning after I woke up from that Illinois nightmare. And I just thought, like, Nebraska should be in this game, but they're not, because everything that they've done is their fault. Like, are they going to have a their fault game, or is Dylan Raiola and Matt Rule in year 2 the cure for the grab ass? Like, are they cured? Somebody said it's a disease, and that's why I'm saying cured. But, like, it does seem like a disease, and that went over coaching regimes in years. This wasn't just like one possession games lost in the most humiliating way over the course of years is just as random to me as Iowa's defensive touchdown trend. Like, it's like, at what point does that weird stuff stop happening? And I think this year could be the year.
Like you were saying when we were talking about Miami over the weekend, nobody believes it until it happens. People think it's impossible until it happens. This may be the year it happens. Now, I think Nebraska's defense is the key to this thing. If they are as good as we think they are, then Nebraska should win this game, because North Dakota State just didn't have the athletes to cover Colorado. Like, you would see that they had to play zone. They couldn't play man against all those guys. They knew they couldn't cover most of those guys in man coverage, and they would lose. They kept losing Jimmy Horn in the zone. He would find these underneath spots and be wide open. And then obviously they couldn't cover Travis Hunter one-on-one. I don't know that anybody's going to be able to cover Travis Hunter one-on-one. But if the rest of the Nebraska defense can handle the rest of the Colorado skill guys, then I think Nebraska has a really good chance to win this game. Nebraska should be able to get after Shedeur Sanders. Remember, North Dakota State didn't really get after Shedeur Sanders that well. They got him down a couple times. They were in his face a little bit. But when Colorado lost last year, somebody was in Shedeur Sanders' face every second of every game. Nebraska is good enough to do that defensively. And then if you can do that, you just have to be competent on offense. And I think Dylan Raiola, we're very excited. We watched what he did. We feel good about what he did against UTEP. But I don't know that he's going to be great against a power conference opponent in his first college game against a power conference opponent. We don't know that. We just need him to be competent. Don't do what Jeff Sims did last year and keep handing the other team the ball, because that is where Colorado took over last year. Is right before half, Nebraska was just gifting them points. Don't gift them any points, and you can win this game. That said, this spread is a little high for my tastes. I think Nebraska's going to win this game, but I think they're going to win it by like 3. So I'm going to take Colorado to cover.
I think I'm going to take Nebraska to cover this game. I think that Nebraska's defense should be improved. You're talking about a team that just ran the ball incredibly well. And again, I know they're playing UTEP, but you had 2 running backs who had 8 carries and averaged 7 or more yards a carry, basically. And I do think that it's a relative lock that Dylan Raiola will play better in this game than Jeff Sims did a year ago. Like, is that a crazy thing to say? Like, I thought it was like a poor
Not crazy at all.
performance. So I think it's like
not the least.
I think that's not just, can Dylan Raiola show up against a Power 5 opponent at home and play well? We're talking about one of the most transcendent athletes coming out of high school that we've had at this position in a long time. This isn't 1996 anymore. These quarterbacks are ready to play very soon through the Elite 11 things and the personal quarterback coaches and all the training that they do. They're ready to play, and he's a physical freak. So yeah. I think that Nebraska is going to be able to move the ball on Colorado at will. And I think that they are athletic enough to stop Colorado from hitting 80-yard touchdowns 2 or 3 times in this game. And I think I could see a 35-23-ish type game. And Colorado, I think, is going to score some points because I think that Travis Hunter is the best player in college football. But I think that Nebraska is going to score a lot in this game.
Yeah, and so Sabizi in the chat saying it's the same defense as last year and Shedeur shredded him. No, he didn't. The game was 0-0 going into the second quarter. So the first points came after a Nebraska fumble. It was a field goal after a 4-play, 6-yard Colorado drive. The next score came after an interception. It was a 30-yard touchdown pass. That was nice. Then Nebraska punts again, and they kick a field goal. Like, it was 13-0 at half. The game was over at that point. So I don't think Shedeur Sanders torched this Nebraska defense last year. I think Nebraska handed them the game. So as long as Nebraska doesn't hand them the game, they're going to be able to win this game. But I do think, like you said, Travis Hunter is going to be able to do some stuff because he's better than everybody else on the field. He's the best player on the field. It really is going to come down to, do they not give it away to them?
Do you know the Nebraska schedule off the top of your head, or have you looked at it recently?
Yes, I have looked at it quite a bit. It is very manageable. If they win this game, they should be 7-0 going into the Ohio State game.
I think this team is going to be 7-0 going into the Ohio State game, and I think that we are going to be like under Dylan Raiola mania by week 6. Like, I don't doubt it. It's like we were talking about hype trains. I'm the conductor of the Dylan Raiola hype train, almost to the point, and I'm actually kind of afraid to say this because I don't know how you're going to react. But on 3 every week, we're going to be doing like a Heisman check-in with our staff, and we have to give 10 candidates. Like, I'm looking at you right now in the face, pal. Dylan Raiola is already on my list.
No shame in that. No shame in that. And like, you look at the schedule.
From everything we were talking about, if Nebraska is 7-0 and he's playing awesome, to be the face of the person that brings Nebraska football back, that is a very compelling and inherently interesting Heisman angle. So I'm just going to put that out there. I'm not saying he's going to win the Heisman. I'm just saying I am really, really, really high on what he can do.
Yeah. It's also potentially lucrative because being the guy who brings Nebraska back, like the NCAA always talk about true NIL. You get the ultimate in true NIL if you're the dude who brings Nebraska back. You're going to get so many tractor commercials. It's going to be incredible. Yeah. Seed commercials. It's going to be awesome. I hope Dylan Raiola can act. That's all I know, because he's going to be in a lot of commercials.
I don't know if he'll ever be in a cooler commercial, literally and figuratively, than DeColdis Crawford, but we'll get there one day.
But unfortunately, DeColdis Crawford did not get to make his mark on the field.
Yeah, no, but the Nebraska commercial will live in my heart forever.
Yeah. Fitty in the chat. Yeah, if Dylan Raiola gets the Runza account, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. All right, so I can't wait for this game because I don't think it's going to be as easy for Nebraska as you think it is. But no matter what happens, everybody's going to have blazing takes off of this game. Because you've got your Deion haters, you've got your Deion lovers, where there can be no middle ground. You can never say, I think Colorado's just okay. Like, you have to say they're gonna stink, or you have to say they're gonna win the Big 12. That you're not allowed to say anything else.
Well, I'm going to call dibs on this right now, but I believe the Texas-Michigan game is at noon on
It is.
Saturday.
It is.
So, which means that you and I will be watching this game together. Dibs on the column after this one, please. Like, let your boy cook, because like this is something that I'm going to want to write about on Saturday night after a long day.
Ari, you know what the
We
beauty
can
of this
both
is?
do it.
We can both write columns about this. It's not going to be we call it in and the editor goes, well, Andy's already writing that, Ari, so you can't also write about that game that everybody's interested in. So maybe you want to do something for Thursday about that? No,
I'm
the takes
so let me put you on
will blast it into your brains.
Yeah, I already wrote the lead, and the game is 8 days away, or whatever, 5 days away. I'm so excited.
I highly recommend against that.
No, I'm kidding.
Is it Dylan Raiola's the best? I love Dylan Raiola. Is that?
Yeah. There's something
What
about
if they
Jesus
lose?
Shuttlesworth in there somewhere about like how this is the greatest recruit of all time. No, I'm just excited to watch it, and honestly speaking, think that is the game of next week.
I think it's the game everybody's going to be glued to, no matter what happens. Because whether it's a blowout either way, people are going to be glued to that. Because people love to bag on Nebraska and people love to bag on Deion. So they're going to love that either way. If it's close, because Deion's involved and because Nebraska's involved, everybody who would have been watching something else is going to gravitate toward this game.
I think the Michigan-Texas game is the most interesting game of the week as it pertains to acorns of how the season's going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the most compelling game for the reality television aspect of college football. Yeah.
Yes. This is so. Here's how I'm envisioning how this works, and we'll be in a hotel in the Metro Detroit area, but I'm thinking this on the TV. Second screen is App State Clemson.
Yeah, we got the iPads charged. I don't ever use my iPad during the off season. It just sits in a drawer somewhere because I don't understand the application of just using a bigger phone because it's harder to type with. But as a second screen, it's like attached to me everywhere I go. I cannot wait. I'm super excited to get out to Detroit. And then after we file our Colorado, Nebraska columns, we're hitting Motor City Casino. We're running it back. we're out. I'm not sleeping in Detroit. Detroit, very underrated city, Andy. Very good food there.
Great city, great food.
Very, very good food there. Somebody will have to explain to me why there's like 9,000 Coney Island restaurants there. I don't understand how that happened, but I don't hate it.
Well, right,
right.
They call that hot dog a Coney Island.
Yeah,
but Coney Island's in Brooklyn. It's not in Detroit. So why do you call that a Coney? Why don't you just call it like a Detroit dog or something?
Well, it's just I think the Coney Island type restaurant just has like fair food that you get on Coney Island. But I don't know why. I don't think I've seen a single restaurant in Dallas or Phoenix or Columbus, the three other cities, or Tucson, the four cities that I've lived in before in my life. But when you go to Detroit, there's one like in every intersection. And like I would love to know what the story behind that is. But by eating at all of them, by the way.
Also amazing Detroit style pizza. I am a huge fan of Detroit style pizza, which is a kind of a deep dish. It's rectangular. The pieces are square. It's got a great kind of the crust chars on the outside. It's pretty spectacular. If you've never had Detroit style pizza. There's
a pizza place in Greektown that I don't think is like, there are a few places in Detroit that I think people think are some of the best pizza in America. This isn't one of them, but it's called Pizzapopolis, and I went there with Landis a few times.
A great Greektown pizza place.
Yeah. It was delicious. So I might venture over there, like, you know, the stress eating after you lose a lot of money that you have to like feed to make yourself feel better.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we're all going to be best friends. You know all about my traumas, but I think I'm gonna swing in there Friday night while I'm waiting for my best friend to show up.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this weekend. It's going to be so much fun. And then Ari and I are road tripping the following week. We're just going to be traveling around. We're going to wind up at Alabama, Wisconsin the following Saturday. But who knows where we might pop up during the week. It's going to be spectacular. This weekend is going to be so much fun. I'm pumped after picking these games. Like, I really, because now Boise State, Oregon, which, by the way, will be on while we are doing our post-game show, because that is a 10 p.m. Eastern start on Peacock, by the way. What's the over-under on people freaking out because they got to sign up for Peacock to watch that game?
Yeah, probably a lot, but I have Peacock, and it's actually quality.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Twisted Metal, great show. You'd never watch a show based on a video game. I understand you're a snob like that. But Twisted Metal is amazing. Poker Face, also good. Kind of the old, like,
what's
guest
the
star of the
show
week
about?
situation.
All Twisted Metal was like running into each other and ruining the other car. Like, what's the drama of that?
They've basically made a story about it, and Sweet Tooth, as voiced by Will Arnett, is a spectacular villain.
Okay, maybe I'll check it out. I'll check it out. I have rants about some of the shows that I've watched recently, but we can save those for one of the later shows in the week.
Well, we got shows. We got shows every day. Monday through Thursday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern time. That is the new schedule. And then Saturday night, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time is when we'll be live reacting to all the games, also watching Oregon and Boise State slug it out. So we got all kinds of fun this week, and we will talk to you tomorrow.